In this video, we're going to show you how to install the front drive shaft rearward CV joint on your Hummer H3 located underneath your vehicle. Underneath the center of your vehicle, you're going to go ahead and remove this little skid plate here. This protects the transfer case. You have 3 13mm bolts. Use that 13mm socket and remove these bolts. Remove that skid plate and set that aside. Now before we remove all of our bolts here and we remove the drive shaft, you want to go ahead and mark using a crayon of some sort on the placement of your drive shaft so that everything goes back in the way it was from the factory. Now what we're going to do is, because we're going to be replacing this end unit here, the CV joint unit, I'm going to go ahead and mark this portion here on the flange. And then I'm going to come over and I'm going to mark the corresponding side on the actual drive shaft to give us a general idea. So I'm just going to put a yellow crayon mark on the drive shaft where it lines up with this here. That way when I install it, I can line up this line with this portion on the flange. We're going to do the same thing on the front portion of the drive shaft to make sure that that lines up with the yoke properly as well. Now we have 4 10mm bolts. You can use a wrench here. You can probably use a ratchet. We're going to use an extension. Come right over the cross member. I'm going to use my ratchet on the bolt and a pry bar on the other end to lock that drive shaft. Just with that loose, we'll go ahead and spin it around to the other one. With both of those bolts loose, we can now switch back over to our power tool and zip that out the rest of the way. Use a rubber mallet, see if we can, there we go, bonk that loose. Pop that out and just set it there. Now we can use an 11mm socket to loosen and remove these bolts right here. Now I'm going to go ahead and leave the bolts in here for now. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this around. Go ahead and loosen these two. Now you want to be careful when you're doing this here. I'm doing this by hand right now because once I remove the last caps and everything, you want to go ahead and support that drive shaft. You don't want to have it pop out and bonk you in the head or anything like that. So safety is definitely playing a role right here. All right, our drive shaft is staying put, so that's good. Remove our cap. Now we have our U-joint caps right here and here. I'm going to go ahead and use a pry bar and want to support this here. And gently pry this off. Make sure these caps do not fall off. Now at this point, you just need to maneuver the drive shaft. So go ahead and slide that out. And let's go ahead and go over to the bench. Now I want to go ahead and pull this unit off of our drive shaft. Now there's a metal band clamp right here, and it has a little crimp on the end. You can use a chisel, you can use a screwdriver. Basically what we want to do is pop this band off, and it's a one-time use, so you're going to scrap it anyways. Go ahead and use your screwdriver and work that seal. Don't use your screwdriver and try and pop it towards yourself. I'm just going to use a razor blade and go ahead and cut that. We're going to use a chisel here and come around our cap. Actually, we're going to rotate this here. We're going to use our chisel and come around the cap here. Now I went ahead and cleaned up the end of our drive shaft unit here, and this is where the bearings run through. And you can see there's going to be two little tabs here. They're almost like a copper or brass color looking tab setup. And what it is, it's a snap ring, but it doesn't have holes for a snap ring pliers to fit into, but you can still open that up using some expandable pliers. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get inside here and expand this out, and then tap this unit off. Once you get past a certain point, you can go ahead and slide this off. And go ahead and use some spray solvent to clean off these splines. Now we have our new CV unit right here. And here we have the supplied grease. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this grease and we're going to simply press this down inside. We do want to put some on the splines here as well. I want to go ahead and push as much of this grease down inside. Sometimes you can just squeeze that rubber boot and work that down in there. Because there's bearings down inside here that we need to get that grease into. So just kind of work this around. Go ahead and get some grease on the splines. Supplied clamp here, drop that down. Go ahead and take the shaft here and slide that down inside. You're going to feel for that to insert into the spline inside. There it is. And push that down. There we go. And you know it's locked in if you pull it up, and that shaft will not come out. So we now know that this shaft is locked in to that collar that we had just released on the old one. And it's secured. Let's go ahead and wipe this down. Now what we want to do is install our clamp here. Now there is a special tool that you can use for this. It looks something like this here, and you end up securing tabs on here and tightening this here. The chances of you having this tool is not that common. If you do happen to have it, you know how to use it. If you don't have it, we're simply going to use a pair of pliers to go ahead and stretch this, tighten it, and then we'll lock it into place. Now what we want to do is basically, we need to push on this here. We want to use our pliers on the other end to pull. We do want to make sure this is pretty snug because we don't want any grease coming out. Pull and then fold this over. Bring this back. And there's two little tabs here we need to fold over. I'm going to go ahead and snip the end of this here with some pliers. The snipped end I like to pinch over. Here we go. Our drive shaft is ready for installation. Now, installing your front drive shaft, you want to make sure that the bearing caps are in place and held tight. We're going to feed up the rear section here and then position the front drive shaft and get our bearing caps fit in here. Now, there are little blocks right here. You want to make sure that your bearings fit inside of that. Then we can rest the drive shaft on the cross member. Going to take your bearing caps, go ahead and get those started. Get those bolts run in there. Now we're not going to tighten this, we're just running these bolts down to keep that cap secured. Go ahead and grab that drive shaft, we're going to go ahead and rotate that around. You want to make sure that this bearing cap is also inside that block. Install this bearing cap. You want to make sure that that bearing cap is fully seated inside. You want to go ahead and just double check everything. And sometimes you can use your rubber mallet just to go ahead and make sure that's secure. We're not using a hammer. You don't want to smash the bearing cap here. I'm just using a rubber mallet. Make sure that it's in there, and it is. It's fully seated. Now we're going to go ahead and gently snug these. Go ahead and rotate this around. Do the same thing here. Just make sure that that bearing cap is fully seated. You can see if it's seated or not. With these snug down, let's go ahead and move to the tail section and install that. Now, when we removed our original drive shaft, we went ahead and we marked the flange here, and we had marked the front flange. Now, they were pretty much in line with one another. So our yellow mark is right over here. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and rotate this drive shaft until my yellow mark lines up on the front, and then I can grab this, and I'm gonna rotate this like so. Here's our yellow mark here. Our yellow mark is on the front side, lining it up. Now I'm gonna take this here and kind of stretch this out a little bit. Just gonna pull that into that flange. Go ahead and get one of those started. And then just follow around. You're gonna go ahead and get the other one started. If you have to, at this point, you can go ahead, grab that drive shaft and rotate it if needed. I'm just pushing on the upper portion of the CV flange. Now that I got two of these bolts in, it's gonna be easy peasy. Go ahead and just rotate that around. At this point, we can go ahead and snug these down. Now I want to go ahead and torque down these flange bolts here to 45 foot-pounds. Now I'm going to have to use your pry bar on that front portion of the drive shaft to keep that from rotating. With those torqued, let's go ahead and torque the front bolts. I'm going to torque down our forward flange bolts or our forward bearing cap bolts to 18 foot-pounds. Gonna line up your skid plate. And let's get your bolt started here. Gonna go ahead and run that just a little bit. Now I did go ahead and put some anti-seize compound on here. Let's just go ahead and zip these down and make them good and tight. At this point here, you're ready to go for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.